Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ASPRS Mentors Podcast. My name is Greg Stamnish, Chair of the ASPRS Early Career Professionals Council, or ECPC. We also have with us Jordan Hicks, Vice Chair of the ECPC. Jordan, you want to say hi?
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. I'm Jordan Hicks, Vice Chair of the Early Career Professionals Council, and I am really glad to be here today. Thanks, Greg.
Dr. Smith, are you okay with us recording this and sharing it on social media?
Yes. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but yes.
So our guest this week is Dr. Francois Smith. What is your preferred method of your name? Is it Dr. Smith, Francois, Dr. Francois?
Just Francois is fine. Nobody calls me Dr. Smith at work for some reason. I don't know why, but and when they do, I just assume they're talking about my dad. So
your dad was also a doctor?
yeah, he's a professor.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we have some questions here for you today. One of the more intriguing ones, or how we're going to start off anyways, is how did you get into the field of remote sensing back when it was kind of a smaller industry? And how did it lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, that's epic journey, actually. I actually started in anthropology. I got a degree in anthropology from the University of South Carolina. And after that, I went to work for the SCIA, the South Carolina Institute of Anthropology and Archaeology. And while I was there, and I was only there briefly, but it was enough. It was actually a very important time, actually, in my career development, because what I was doing was cataloging archaeological sites using topo maps and GPS and aerial photos, which are tools that I had never experienced before. And I realized that the archaeological science lifestyle was, it was really great, right after graduation. But in terms of that being a mature industry, I mean, at the time, early 90s, maybe not so much. And also I realized I was really enjoying the tools themselves, using the tools. Some funny things that would happen. Sometimes the archaeologists would come into the institute and want to catalog a site that they just found. And so they'd give me lat and long coordinates. And of course, I'd try to map those. And I'd say, wow, so this site's in the South Pacific Ocean. And they would be like, no, maybe not. So sometimes we'd actually have to go out into the field with the GPS. And of course, that's when selective availability was still on. So I learned all about the collecting data from the base station at the same time, and then doing differential corrections and all that sort of thing. So that was a very formative time. Learned a lot about geography, and I thought, you know what? I should apply for the master's degree in geography. It's just kind of a little more interesting to me in terms of technology and whatnot. So that's what I did, and I got accepted to the geography department there. And it's interesting because I'd never heard of John Jensen before. And of course, that became my advisor because I was, interested in using aerial photography for identifying basically archaeological sites, man-made features that were covered by vegetation. So, that's actually what my thesis was on. You can see these patterns in vegetation as it's grown over, and if you can automatically kind of identify these things, then you can find a lot more sites a lot more efficiently. And so that's kind of what I was into. Well, anyway, my advisor was John Jensen. I don't really know how I got into the program at the time. I wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I think because maybe there was only two local boys that applied, and maybe that's how I got in. I don't know, but I got in and actually did very well there, and met some good contacts there, which allowed me to work at the Department of Natural Resources, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources afterwards, and that's really where I learned so much about land cover classification using Landsat imagery and satellite image classification. That determined the trajectory, honestly, for the rest of my career. And I was and my mentors, mentors are so important, as you guys know. My mentors, Jim Scurry and Richard Lacey over there at DNR, just made the difference for me. They taught me everything I didn't learn in school, all the techniques I needed to learn to go on from there. And so after a couple of years working there, I decided to go for the Ph.D. So went back under Jensen. This time I knew who Jensen was. And also, I think that one reason why he might have accepted me too is because he also had an anthropology bachelor's. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. But yeah, he came from anthropology as well. So he might have seen something in me that, I don't know. But by this time, I knew a lot about remote sensing. I was really enjoying it. And I've graduated with a PhD. Now, while I was in the department, I heard about this company, EarthSat. And actually, Jensen would talk to us about this company, EarthSat, that was seeking to become the first company to establish a Landsat mosaic, a global Landsat mosaic at 30 meters. And I thought, this is like 1997 or something. I was just like, well, that's impossible. That's crazy. And there was some rumor that then they would make a classification, a global classification at, land cover classification at 30 meters. And I just thought, this is just crazy space technology that anyway. And I heard about them again through a contract I was working through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I kept hearing this name, Greg Kelm. And I said, well, about a year later, after I graduated, I went and interviewed with Greg Kelm, and he became my next mentor. I would say he hired me, and by the way, this is a funny thing about the interview. When I walked into the interview and sat down, we were wearing the exact same suit, and I mean, not just the same style and the same fabric, and what it was like. We checked the brand. It was the same brand. It was literally the same suit. And I thought, man, the stars just aligned, So anyway, maybe that's why I got hired. I don't know. But anyway, I'm after 25 years, I'm still there basically. I mean, EarthSat got bought by NDA, which then I guess bought Digital Globe and became Maxar. But honestly, that time at EarthSat was extremely formative because we're just a group of PhD scientists who were just doing small contracts constantly, and we had to learn a little bit of everything, not just the techniques, but also we had to learn project management skills and business and marketing and everything, because all of it, we were writing proposals ourselves. We were each kind of ourselves doing every aspect from A to Z for creating for obtaining a contract and fulfilling the contract to the customer. So we really learned a lot there, and I wouldn't change that for anything. So maybe that's a benefit for working at a smaller company initially, but of course, working for a large corporation, you have all these resources. So anyway, yeah, I think I answered the question.
So for anybody who doesn't know your advisor, could you just kind of give a brief bio?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little, he was my advisor, so obviously I think he's, one of the godfathers of remote sensing. But I think a lot of people would say that. Let's see. A lot of you are probably familiar with this book, the Introductory Digital Image Processing book. Anyway, that's kind of like the textbook for digital remote sensing, like satellite image remote sensing. So there's that. And also he was kind of one of the first, I don't know about inventors, but one of the first people to use machine learning for doing land cover classification, that sort of thing. And I do a lot of machine learning type applications based on that. Yeah, I guess he's kind of one of the founders of digital remote sensing, So yeah, it's a pretty good person to have on your, I guess what this proves is that having really good mentors throughout my career has been one of the biggest factors to where I've gotten to, I would say.
Success.
Yeah.
So what are your objectives that you hope to achieve before you retire?
Yeah, I guess retirement's not that far off. I've gotten over the hump for my career. That's a good question. I would say that that's a question that we should all, ask ourselves, I think. For me, I like to set goals in increments, like 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals. So it changes over time. And of course, I never really reach all those goals. But I think the important thing is to have those goals so that you're working towards something. And I think that's very important in your career outside of just a specific contract or whatever that you're working on. I guess maybe my overall objective now, I mean, when I was younger, my objectives were like, well, I want to get a NASA contract and I want to get this contract. And now I think a little bit bigger. I think that just facilitating getting information from satellite imagery to people that can use it is really what my main objective is. And that should be everybody's main objective, I think, that does satellite remote sensing. I think making the connection between the people and the imagery by developing more applications that more people can use that are not just not just in geo facilities, people, scientists and the people at large can use. I think that's the most noble objective that I can think of, and that is what I try to do myself. Yeah, I guess so.
So from your perspective, has anything changed over the past 25 years in the industry?
Well, I mean, I would have to say that the most obvious thing is like, here I am working from home. That's a pretty big thing. So it almost feels like everything changed, when I started EarthSat, it was like that movie Office Space, we're all like wrestling with the printer and sitting in cubicles. It was, and that was a great time. So the whole work environment has changed. But beyond that, like the tools have definitely changed. Now have access to high resolution imagery and imagery from all these different sensors. We even have spaceborne hyperspectral data now. We have SAR, spaceborne SAR data, spaceborne LiDAR data. I mean, it's just amazing how much data we have now. So that's a huge thing. As I mentioned, GPS selective availability, that's turned off. And I think a lot of the younger folks are like, well, so what? What is that? I mean, that changed maybe things more than even having all these satellite imagery providers up, because that's what allows you to do like real-time navigation and all that stuff. You realize to get a point, we had to stand there for like 5 minutes, and there's only like 4 satellites up there anyway, so you had to wait till they're aligned right. And then after you sit there and collect all these points, then you sound like an old man, but then you have to download data from the base station, wherever the nearest base station is, and the farther away it is, the less accurate it is. Sometimes you have to set up your own base station over a benchmark, and those benchmarks, they've moved, over time geologically, and then you have to do differential correction with some software, and oh my God, it was a nightmare. And that's what you had to do just to take like a single GPS point, So, I mean, there were tools that you could use, like those big backpacks from Trimble that would do the differential correction for you and stuff like that. I didn't have any access to any of that, but yeah, so that was huge. Of course, artificial intelligence, machine learning type stuff is huge. I mean, even for this meeting, I think Jordan was saying you were using some kind of artificial intelligence recording something. I don't know, but that's obviously been huge to our field. AWS, instead of using file management, instead of using these big file servers. But I'll be honest with you. I think some stuff is easier nowadays, but some stuff is harder. You would think that technology, as it advances or progresses, it would make everything easier, your life easier, but actually it's complicated some things too. But I think it has been good generally for, I don't know, the little guys, the folks just starting out, the people that are not at big corporations, because now the playing field is a little more level, because maybe of course you can't afford a giant file server to store huge amounts of image data, but you probably can afford an AWS account and store it, that way. And maybe you can't afford an EarthSat Imagine license or ARC, Pro license, but you certainly can afford QGIS license. There's no license; it's just open source, and the Python tools. And so those things are not necessarily easier to use, but more people have access to them. So I feel like the technology in our industry, in maybe all tech industry, is not necessarily made things easier, but has made the playing field a little more, given access to more people. And I think that's a good thing. I can tell you one thing. When I used to try to develop a solution for a product, pretty much everything was homegrown. I was using mid-res imagery primarily, and I could look up in PE and RS or RSE or some of these journals to see if somebody else had done something similar, but usually they had not. Usually that was why they were asking us at like EarthSat, for example, to do something, is because nobody had done it before. And so, all right. Well, nowadays, just the sheer number of academic journal articles out there, people are doing like just about everything you do with imagery. So when I start a contract now, like somebody's asking for a solution, the customer is asking for a solution, the first thing I do is look at the literature now. So that's changed. And it's kind of interesting. And usually somebody's done something similar. It's just that, it wouldn't be production ready, but it at least sparks an idea on how to get something done. So that's interesting. Just there's so many more remote sensors today, and yeah.
Do you foresee any changes, or what are your kind of focuses on future changes that are coming?
Yeah, that's a tough question. In the future, so here's my theory about that. Okay, so there's this oscillation between the scientists and the engineers that happens every 10 years or so. So like you need tools to be able to process data, right? And those tools are created by computer scientists or data scientists or computer engineers, whatever. And so they sort of control what can be done with data source, in this case, imagery. But this is for, I think, all tech industry personally. But that kind of takes the control out of the hands of the scientists. The scientists use whatever tools is provided to them because they're not developing the tools. They're using the data, using the tools to look at the data and provide solutions for the most part. Well, eventually what happens is those tools become mature enough that anybody can use them. They end up with like GUI interfaces and, people go to school and learn those tools or whatever. And then I guess development becomes back into the control of the scientists. And then the scientists have more freedom to develop what needs to be developed. But then a new technology will happen 10 years later. And then those tools, the tools to use that technology, are now back in the hands of the engineers. So this is just the way I look at it. There's sort of an oscillation between off-the-shelf software and homegrown tools that comes and goes. Right now, I think we're kind of in a place where, like with machine learning, of course, AI, machine learning, deep learning, they are so big right now that really the control of the development is very much in the hands of the engineers at the moment, which is okay. But I think you just have to be a little bit careful that the technology doesn't become the sole focus of the development. That's a bit of a danger. What needs to be the focus is the data product, the customer, what is being asked for, the data that needs to be provided. However that happens is how it should happen. It shouldn't be specific to one type of technology or another. So it's kind of the danger. But I think what's going to happen, to answer your question about in the future, I think what's going to happen is that a lot of these tools are going to become, again, off-the-shelf software, kind of incorporated into off-the-shelf software and easily accessed by the scientists, and then they'll be back into the hands of the scientists. And then our development in our industry will become, again, more application-oriented.
I think that danger you talked about of focusing on the technology and not the kind of end use customer thing is a common one in our industry across the board, because we are all super interested in the technology and in those things. So we focus on that, and we sometimes lose track of what people are actually looking for. So
It's not just our industry either. Tech industry is suffering because of this. How many times do you hear these tech industries that suddenly they hired 1,000, 2,000 people, and then they let go, 2,300 like the next year? Like, what's going on here? Well, I mean, part of it is because they're building stuff that's not necessarily customer driven. I mean, how many times do I have these advertisement for some kind of 3D head device that's going to take me into some virtual world and I'm going to be able to walk in the stars or something? But I mean, that's really cool. It's super cool stuff, but I don't need it. That's not, I have some needs. And if you can develop what I need, then I'll buy it. But I don't need that, So, and then they spent billions of dollars on these systems and then nobody bought it. So they're suffering, that's all across the board in the tech industry. Seems obvious to us, I think, but we're not the ones making these decisions, I guess.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that the headset. I had a land surveyor come into my office once. I was working for a multidisciplinary engineering company, and the land surveyor came in and didn't say hi to anybody, just put on these goggles and was going like this. And we're like, what is he doing? And then he's like, come over here, check it out. We scanned a mine shaft, and you can put these on and you can look up the mine shaft. And there were structural engineers, industrial engineers, they all tried it out and they all kind of walked away, and we're wondering okay, how does that help us? How does that help our jobs?
Yeah, but it's so cool.
It was cool. I'll give them that. So can you characterize the industry today in regards to the roles of data science, remote sensing science, programming, and applications expertise?
Yeah, and I think we covered some of that just then. Really, I guess I would say that we need a balance in the tech field with all of those things. We certainly need the data science, we need the new tools, but we also need to maintain remote sensing principles, and sometimes that gets lost in the mix. And it looks like we at least at this point in the career, you do need some programming experience. It looks like Python is the language of choice, and because of all the amazing libraries that have been developed. But we also need applications expertise. So now that you can build these wonderful tools and build these wonderful data sets, well, how are they going to be used? I mean, who cares? So there's all that. And I think the way for the industry and for academia to really facilitate that balance is, not everybody in this graduate department has to be focused on deep learning, for extracting certain features. Not everybody. How about some people do learn photogrammetry? And how about some people learn some SAR, become SAR experts, and some people learn atmospheric correction, for example. That's looked over quite a bit nowadays, it seems to me. So that sort of thing. And I also, now this is something that's kind of interesting. John Jensen actually told us in a seminar, and we all dismissed this, and we were so stupid to have dismissed it. But he said, look, I'm looking in this seminar and I see all these very good scientists. You're all very top notch, and I'm very proud of you and whatnot. But you're a dime a dozen. There's a whole bunch of very good scientists coming out of many different programs, and that's not what we have a shortage of. What we have a shortage of are the people who can turn your science into products to create a mature industry, the one that's not just based on, not just trying to get government contracts, from, GeoInt kind of, government facilities. That's where the money is, but it doesn't have to be. So to really create a mature industry, we need some commercial activity. We need more commercial activity. That needs to be the bulk of the, of the transactions. And in order to do that, he suggested, why don't some of you guys take some business management courses? And everybody was like, nah, I mean, that's not why we went to, that's not why we went into this. Nobody wanted to do business. But as soon as I got out in the field and working at EarthSat, the first thing that when I got a contract on my own was like, okay, here's your budgets. Here's the people that are working for you. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, he's totally right. I mean, to make a successful, and it really, every one of those, even little projects, certainly at the time anyway, the industry was young enough that it was teetering on the success of all these little projects. So, I mean, if your project fails, and if someone else's project fails, I mean, it has a bigger impact on the industry itself, on the entire industry. So I feel like there was a lot of pressure there, especially early on. I agree with them. I think we just need a balance. We need all different types. It's a mature enough industry that there needs to be many different types of people coming to the table, not just people who are just really good at Python right now, or just really, really know all the math and trigonometry behind photogrammetry. We need all people we can get, all different folks, and people from also applications like forestry and agriculture and many different fields.
So is there any technical skills in particular that you would tell people to focus on for success?
Yeah, and of course I'm not a professor, but if I were telling people like what courses to take, I would definitely concentrate on the principles of remote sensing first and foremost, because I think that's where you should start. That usually is in a geography department, but it's in all different kind of departments, forestry and ag and all different kind of departments. But I think if you come at it from the principles first and then learn the tools, then you keep that perspective of the tools not being the focus of your work, the tools being tools, exactly what they are, tools, and your objectives being to turn this data into useful products, useful information for a wide range of applications. So that I would definitely say that first and foremost. But then, yeah, you have to learn the tools. And if you didn't get them in school, you got to learn them on your own. And the tools right now, these days, I mean, like everybody's asking for QGIS and Python libraries, and need to learn a little bit about AWS, a little bit of the IT behind that. But you also need to learn the off-the-shelf softwares too. You need ArcPro, Imagine, Envy, PCI, whatever. And I think another thing is that when you have focused your remote sensing towards a certain application, you need to learn that application. So like if you're focused on deforestation or climate studies, well, let's say deforestation, that's easier. Then you need to learn about tree structure, what causes deforestation, and where in the world it's happening, the geography of deforestation and water balance and all that stuff. You need to really learn how that data is used, because then you'll be more informed when you're creating a product to be used in that application.
So when they're kind of on the job learning, do you have any recommended sources for that kind of learning? Like once you've left academia and now you're at work and you've got to learn all these new things, is there any tips for that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get yes. I'm going to say that the number one thing is to go to the conferences, because that's where you really see where everything's being done. And I'm always pushing so hard. Companies hate to send you to conferences because it's like a lot of money. But when you show them like, hey, here's what came out of this conference. You have to do your due diligence when you go to these conferences. You have to write a report when you get home, and you need to say, this is what I learned. This is who I'm talking to now, and this is what I think is going to come out of it. Like we're going to make a sale because I went to this conference. Of course, the main remote sensing ones that I always go to, ASPRS, of course, number one, and Pecora, of course, but also AGU is huge. And and I don't know if you know about the JC conference. That's a CalVal, Sensor CalVal conference sponsored by USGS. It's usually at headquarters over in Reston, Virginia. There's the LC Luck Vancouver conference. Is free. The JC's free also. Some of these are free conferences. If you can go to them, and you will learn so much and what other people are doing, and they'll share so many ideas, and that'll give you a lot of guidance of where to find your niche. But the other thing too is I notice in my emails, I get all these invitations to these free seminars from all over the place. Some of them are software companies. Some of them are from NASA has a seminar series. Those are great too, and I try to go to at least some of those. So yeah, I would say. Well, and then there's LinkedIn Learning. Once you've identified, like, oh man, I need to know more about database management or whatever, then there you can always take a course on there. Hopefully your company or government office will sponsor, LinkedIn Learning. I don't know. But also just YouTube. My goodness. Like this is going to be on YouTube. So
Sure.
You can get just about anything on YouTube.
Your note about due diligence when attending a conference, my advice to the audience is to do your due diligence, and it will help you get support to go to more conferences if you do it well enough, and implement things you've learned from the conferences into your workplace.
Exactly.
So can you provide your thoughts on the different sectors in the industry, including USG, contracting, academia, nonprofit, local government, and small businesses?
Yeah, I think so. I do have a certain perspective on that. It's not, I haven't worked for all those sectors, but I've touched on most of them. I worked at state government, and I currently work for a contractor. And we were at one point a small business, and now we're a big corporation. So I do have a little bit of, intersect with some of those things. And I can say they're very different environments to work in, and there's positive and negatives to each one of them, to be honest with you. And I don't know necessarily that there are one sector that I prefer to work in, but yeah, some positive and negatives. I mean, obviously, if you work for USG, you're probably going to have better job security. It's the contractors, it comes and goes on the contractor. But one benefit, I think, in working as a contractor is that there's more diversity with regards to the projects that you will work on. Because really it comes down to, well, this is what the need is. This is what they're asking for. So have you done this? No. Well, figure it out. There's a lot of that. And so there's a lot of forced on the job training, to be honest with you, when you're working for a contractor. Usually when you're working for a U.S. government, they hired you for a specific kind of type of work, and you're probably going to be doing that for quite some time. So, yeah. And I say that there's a high turnaround in contractor work, but actually, I mean, I've been where I'm at for 25 years. I don't want to jinx anything, but I'm not. I think that if you find a niche, and actually that's one of my suggestions, is find a niche in whatever your workplace is, and focus on that. Like, for example, my company, we had, we didn't have anybody that was really knowledgeable about like benthic mapping, like seagrass and some of that type of mapping, bathymetry, that sort of thing. Now, I actually had already some experience in that, but there were a few contracts that came out where we needed that. So well, here I am. I can do that for you. And since I was the only one really at the, for some time, for quite some time that had an experience in that, just being an expert in one particular aspect, that'll for sure keep you around, and especially if you get really good at it. So that's one thing. If you can find a niche in something that will keep you around for much longer. I think the biggest negative for me working in a corporate environment has been how to share ideas. So like I can do something like this, which is more theoretical and more general, and I can present some papers or even write some articles, but they're all going to have to be pretty much application articles, like how people are using our data or how I'm using our data. But I can't really share processes that I develop, and I wish I could. And that's probably the only drawback, because I feel like there's some ideas that I've come up with, some processes that I've developed that I think could influence, some research, and I think could help out folks in the industry. But I know the only way it's going to see the light of day is if it's reverse engineered from a product that we create. That's not good. But I do still manage to present occasionally and write something here and there. They try to get me to write blogs mainly, but I don't know. I'm not from really the age of blogs, and most of the blogs that I have read are a little suspicious. I mean, peer review is so important. If you have to be careful. Well, I'm not tell you that, but this age, information off the internet, it really depends on what the source is. That's the first thing I look at is the source. I guess a major corporation blog, that's fine, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That was like the best advice I had in college was I was writing a paper and just using random sources. And my professor said, focus on the sources. If you want this thing to have any weight, you have to have good sources. And I don't know why it stuck in my brain, but now it just applies to everything I do. Like you said, the first thing I do is look at the source and then decide if it's a good one or a bad one and go from there.
Yeah. And that works in everything in life too, by the way,
Yeah, definitely applicable outside of academia and work as well. So.
And by the way, I think that's very important. I think that we're scientists, right? We should live our life as scientists, everything we should do should be research, fact-based. Every decision we make needs to be that. And if it is, then we'll be successful not just at work, but also in other aspects of life too. And also it'll help our work. I mean, imagine, it's an extreme example, but Albert Einstein, for example, when he developed the theory of relativity, he was sitting on a train and he was looking at objects outside the window. I mean, that's where you do your best thinking. What's the chance that you had the deepest thought at work? It's low because you're already doing other stuff, right? But when you have time for your mind to wander, and if it wanders into a scientific space, that's where you're gonna probably have your best ideas, and those ideas are going to be maybe some of your most innovative and some of your biggest concepts. So just don't stop thinking as a scientist just because you went home at 5 p.m.
I like it. So you touched on processes and how you wish you could share some of your processes, but you can't. But can you share your process for developing products and processes?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I see what you did there. That's good. I would say that so like my personal process would be and I think this is sometimes a step that is ignored or skipped sometimes, but the most important when you're trying to develop anything or develop a solution for, to answer a particular problem is you really have to understand that problem first and foremost. Now, a lot of times RFPs, for example, do a good job of stating what the problem is and that sort of thing, but it may not be totally completely informative. So a lot of times that'll take a little bit of research on your own or talking with the writers of the RFP or whatever. But if you really got to understand the parameters and what's really being asked for. That's really the critical step for developing any process. I think is before you start solving anything. Is to really understand what it is that you're looking at, and then for me, once I've understood that, once I feel like I've understood that, like we've talked before, it's important to be technology agnostic. Just not just immediately go in and say, oh, well, I just learned all this machine learning, I'm just going to throw that at this. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't know. What is the best? Maybe just a more simple or more traditional method is the best answer. Who knows? But my next step is it nowadays anyway is to hit the literature and just look at what people have been doing. And I mean, you can even use Google as a great tool nowadays, just to look for articles online. There's so much published online now. ResearchGate is another good one. And just look to see what other people have done when faced with a similar type of development, for whatever application. So yeah, I do my research there. And then the developer process, when I develop a process, I develop it like in a spatial modeler. It doesn't matter which one, because why spend the time like programming stuff out when, it could be, you don't know what all the steps are. But in a modeler, it's just visual. You can see what the steps are, and you can put your inputs and everything. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I'm a very visual person. And to me, a spatial modeler is just the best development tool, best development environment. So I do everything in the modeler and figure out what all the steps are going to be. And maybe that's not a good production environment, but it's a good environment for just establishing the steps. And once I've established all the steps and I built everything into usually a series of models for a workflow, then I write a document. I document exactly what each of these steps are. And I test. I always choose at least 10 samples across many different biomes around the world. And I test that way, and I do verification afterwards, do validation, and make sure that my results are up to the parameters, up to the specs of the RFP. And if they are, then I've got something. Otherwise, the thing I also like about creating these model components is that maybe one of them is not working as well. And hey, well, here's an article that says that this works better. And let's try that. So we can just replace that component and continue building our workflow that way, so that it's component driven. And maybe somebody else from the company has a better idea on how to do a specific component. That's fine. Here, you work on just that component. Now, once I get all those models and the workflow document all worked out, I send that to like our production programming folks. And they know my models very well. I've been working with these people for a long time, so they can just look at my models and they can figure out exactly what libraries to use and how to put it all together. And they're, indispensable in this process. And then they create these production environments. They've already created these production environments, and then they lift their scripts into the production environment. And then they have these wrapper scripts that do each component. They still keep it component driven though. That's really important, because that's how you can do continual improvement, because no process is done, right? That's a big thing. A lot of people, they try to say, well, you've created a workflow process to create this product and it's working. All right, you're done. Move on to something else. Well, you need the feedback from the production folks and QA, QC staff. There needs to be something like that. And there are always new new environments that you're running a process in where it's not working as well. But if you get that feedback, you can make the modifications to specific components, and then those can be lifted into the workflow, and then you're fine. So yeah, that's how I approach that. Feedback is very important, and component driven workflows are very important, and everything has to be documented.
When you talked about like starting with a spatial modeler, it reminds me of the software. It's called Safe Software's feature manipulation engine. It's kind of a programming software that is kind of based on that workflow of just creating a visual workflow, and I've used it and had good success in getting even like non-programming type minded people to do some programming work. So
yeah, well, it's a great way to organize your thoughts.
It's definitely like for myself in a management role, I can look at it and it logically makes sense, and I go, yeah, looks good. Kind of helps with that as well. So do you have any parting advice on working in satellite remote sensing? And also, we've asked this question to a few guests and always hear some interesting answers. Do you have a library of books that every remote sensing scientist should also have?
Absolutely. That's interesting that other people have weighed in on that too, because I wonder how my library corresponds with some of theirs. I bet you'll hear some of the same books. But yeah, regarding parting advice, yeah, for sure. Living as a scientist, that's it. You are a scientist. If you're in this field, you're a scientist, and you are a processor of data, and you are an interpreter of data, and that's really how you should see the world, in my opinion. And that's what you're good at, if you're doing this work. And that's what I'm good at, and that's how I look at everything, honestly. And I think sometimes it can be a bit stoic, but I think it keeps everybody. It keeps you sort of. I guess on a certain path. Yeah, finding your niche at work, that's an important one. Also, I'd say this: if there's a skill that you are not very good at, rather than trying to force yourself to be good at that particular skill, teamwork. Find someone bring someone onto your team that can compensate for that you feel that you're not good at. Because if you can find someone who is good at it, but is not good at maybe some of the things you're good at, now that's a team. Now that's how you create things that are much bigger and greater than you could do on your own, or that just some random people could do. So definitely that. Continual learning, that's important, I would say. Joining your professional organizations, ASPRS, going to the conferences. So yeah, I think we covered some of that stuff. Social media like LinkedIn and ResearchGate. We should all be members of ResearchGate and obviously have a LinkedIn account. But yeah, regarding my books, yeah, I'll wrap it up with that. Of course, Jensen's Intro to Digital Image Processing book is just a great. It's just a great book to reference. I still reference it in articles. And I don't know why it's called Intro to Digital Image Processing, because it's like, sometimes it gets pretty advanced and I'm like, how's this intro? That's not intro. and true, the first version, which I have the first edition, is like this, is tiny, it's a much smaller book. But over the years, it's grown on, what are we on, the fourth edition or something? And it's grown substantially. So now I think that's a terrible name, but it's an important book. Another one that I think, this is a book that I think everybody probably already has, is the Russ Congleton and Cass Green, Assessing the Accuracy of Remote Sensing Data. You know what I'm talking about? That's and by the way, Russ just became the Pecora Award winner this year at the ASPRS conference. So, and this would be why probably. He's great at many other things too, but this book just needed to happen. Oh, geez. Yeah, definitely that one on accuracy assessment, because that's an art form, and that I think sometimes gets David Mohn's DEM User's Manual. That's an ASPRS publication, actually. But man, that has become very useful, especially since we do a lot of 3D type work and terrain analysis and all that. So yeah, the DEM User's Manual. For SAR, I like the Ian Woodhouse's Introduction to Microwave Remote Sensing. And I also have this mathematical remote sensing book that's the Andrew Millman Mathematical Principles of Remote Sensing, which is pretty good background for algorithm development and understanding how algorithms work and that kind of stuff. But I'll be honest with you, some of the math gets a bit heavy for me, but that's why we have people, you know, in the company that can explain that stuff to me. I don't have to know all the math, but it's a good background book to have. So that's my library. Does that correspond with anybody else's that you've talked to?
Yeah, some of them. The first time I asked that question was we had a leadership coach or a professor that teaches leadership on the podcast, and I think that's one of those topics that, like, there's just an influx of thousands and thousands of books every year. So I asked him, like, can you narrow it down for us? Because I think there's a little too many there to read all of them. And he narrowed it down. But yeah, there's been a few that you mentioned. Usually, just like you did there, guests have them right in their shelf or holding up their table, or it's right around them somewhere so they can reach it right away. And I have a few right here too. So that's why.
Yeah, that's science. The scientists for you.
So if anybody wants to reach out to you and learn more, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, I guess my email is good. LinkedIn account is good. My email is pretty simple, francois.smith@maxar.com. So there's that. And I guess that will be the two ways to do it.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to open up the floor here to questions from the audience. I sent a message there and I haven't seen a response, but that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to unmute themselves. Is there any questions from the live audience? I'm silent.
Usually everybody takes like 5 minutes to formulate a
thought.
Of course, we only have like 3 minutes left.
That's okay. Well, we did provide information for them to reach out to you and ask some further questions. I'm going to check out Woodhouse. There was a few that you mentioned there that I haven't heard of that I'm going to check out. If nobody has any questions, we can adjourn. Oh, we might have one here. Let's see.
Yeah. Hey, this is Jordan Hicks, and I just wanted to thank you, Francois, for taking the time to speak with us. And my question, you mentioned, lots of different remote sensing technologies, active, passive, and several books on them. As far as a lot of these books, like you said, get into some pretty deep topics. What would be the first stepping stone you would take? Would it be elements of photogrammetry or learning basic trigonometry, or what would be the first step?
Oh, I would start very general. I wouldn't get deep into any of that. Like the first book I read on remote sensing was the Lillison and Kiefer book, which was, I think most people's intro into photogrammetry and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then this intro to digital image processing, I would go that route because that gives you a sort of general perspective on everything that you need that is related to remote sensing and doing remote sensing. And then from there, I would pick my specialty. Like maybe photogrammetry is what appeals to you, and then I would go deeper into that, or SAR processing, or change detection, or whatever. But I wouldn't start specifically. I would start generally, and then find your interest.
Great.
I've got a question that I thought of earlier, and now it left my brain and it's already come back again. When you were talking about working in various sectors of the industry, I guess so the audience is people that have just graduated from university up to about age 35 is what we say, but I mean, not everybody goes to university at the same time. The first 15 years of your career. Is it okay, for lack of a better term, to bounce around between those sectors to find the one that's, like you said, your niche, or, find what you like? And what's a way of doing that doesn't burn bridges?
Wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't necessarily think bouncing around is so good. Like, oh, I'm gonna try this job, then I'm gonna try that job, and then I'm gonna try that. It seems like it would be, but yeah, you're right. You can sort of, it can be a red flag to some people later who are like, oh, this person doesn't stick with it, But I think there are logical, transitions, like starting at state government, then going to a small company, which then got absorbed by a corporation. I think that was really ideal. And then maybe if you work at a contractor for a while, accepting a position at federal government. I think if you follow a more natural progression, then it's probably a little better than just dipping into all the different. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. That just seems more what would be expected by. Yeah. I mean, I think showing loyalty is kind of important. Actually, somebody from LinkedIn reached out to me. It was one of those recruiters, and they were like, "Hey, you've got some, there's some things on your resume here that we want to, that we're interested in. We want to maybe hire you or whatever." It's like, well, I don't know, man. I've been at this place for a long time. They said, well, how long have you been there? I was like, well, at the time it was like 20 years. I was like, oh, 20 years. And they were just like, nobody does that. What do you? So I don't know. Maybe times have changed now. So maybe people do bounce around more.
Yeah, I mean, I can comment a little, or I think I would like to comment on that. So working in owning a small company, I get to do, I mean, I wear every hat there is, or I feel like I do. And so somebody working for a small company might get to try out a bunch of different technologies or different approaches. So maybe, yeah, I don't know, keeping an open mind is always nice, but yeah.
That's a good point. That's why it is kind of nice to start out at a small company. You really do get experience in so many different aspects of the industry, not just sitting and having to concentrate on one thing.
One of the things I never shared in this podcast that I wanted to do when I was the guest was, for if anybody's a student watching this, to take advantage of those job opportunities that come when you're a student for internships and stuff like that. And that might be your ticket to getting exposed to all kinds of different sectors of the industry, and also geographically, like maybe you want to try out a different part of the country or part of the world to do an internship. I think that's a good plan. I've told so many students that over the years, and not a lot of them took me up on my offer, but I wish they had, and I wish I had too when I was a student. So
it's a really good point, because there are a lot of opportunities out there, internships and other things. If you do a little research, you look up online, you think, well, I would never get an internship at NOAA or NASA or whatever. They wouldn't. Well, actually, they probably will. I mean, it's not 100%, but you should definitely apply. And the more things you apply to, the more opportunities you'll get. But a lot of people just think, I'm just from way out in Kansas somewhere, and nobody's gonna, want me to work for them or whatever. But it's not true.
Yeah, once you get into those organizations, you find out that everybody's from way out in Kansas, and you're all people.
I'm from a small town in South Carolina.
Yeah. There you go.
I just kept saying yes.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat here. So how do you keep the spark for the field after being in it all these years, and recommendations for early career folks on how to stay engaged and maintain their interest in the field while in the workforce?
Oh boy. Well, okay. Keeping the spark for a long time. I will be very honest with you. You don't keep the spark continually for 25 years. There's times when you're like, oh my goodness, I'm just staring at the screen for an hour. How am I even going to charge this to a contract? Jeez, man, there's always going to be times like that. But you just, you kind of just have to get through those times, and then something interesting will happen. And then, so for me, it's a lot of fits and starts, but also, I look at the field itself. I'm very excited about the field. I feel like I chose like the perfect field, at least for me, because it's like I got in right at the early stages of digital image processing, and I've taken it so far to now, and I'm ready to hand the baton on in I don't know, well, 10 years or so. And I just feel like I played a role in helping this industry become more mature. And that sort of sense of ownership, I think, is a big point of why I have the spark, whatever that might be. But yeah, it's not always, you're not always have lots of energy. Also, I drank some caffeine before this flip talk. So regarding early career folks on how to stay engaged and maintain interest in the field while in the workforce, I guess early on, I think it's more about finding what your interest is and finding what your passion is. Then, yeah, because the idea is that you've already found it, hopefully by the time you're my age. But I think it's a lot of searching out what your specific interest is. So, like working for Jordan, for example, and experiencing all the different aspects of the industry for, collecting LiDAR and using that data to create, all the wonderful products his company does. And then saying, you know what, I really am interested in flood modeling. I really find this interesting, and I can save lives doing it. So really get into that, dig down into that, and I think once you find you'll find a passion when you have a realization that this is important work and that you're good at it.
And that passion can help you get through the ebbs and flows of the days when sometimes you think, I don't have a spark, and then, yeah, like you said, the things change, and then all of a sudden you're right back into something and it fires right up again.
Well, that's the thing, is it changes. This industry is changing, and every company is changing. Yeah, I've been at the same company technically for 25 years, but we've had like 5 different names or something. My email's changed like 5 different times, and my place of work has changed many times. So it feels like 5 different companies, really. It's just constantly changing, and I know that it'll change next year, and that's fine. Sometimes it is a better place to work than other times, but that's okay. It certainly keeps it interesting.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for your contribution to our podcast. I think there's a lot of hidden little nuggets in there throughout the conversation that I certainly appreciate. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of everybody for your time. And it was great. So thank you very much.
A pleasure. Thank you.